Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Herald here on Badlands Media. I'm your host, Jon Herold. Plenty to discuss today. I do want to start the show off with a little housekeeping. So last night's DPH, there was some sort of storage issue. I woke up this morning to a bunch of messages where people were trying to go watch it on Rumble, and it wasn't playing. It was just playing like the 29-second little clip, whatever they call that thing. Well, it wasn't working. And so I messaged Rumble, and they said that they were having some storage issues last night, and they were trying to resolve it. I don't know if they were able to fix it yet. Actually, I could probably check that, huh? Let me see if it works now. But regardless, whether or not it works, I do want to make sure you guys are all aware of where our YouTube is. Okay, it does say that it's working on my end now, but I don't know, maybe it's not working on your end. And regardless, we stream everything to a couple different platforms, always Twitter, typically always YouTube. Most of the shows have been told like, hey, just stream it to YouTube, we're fine. We have a couple channels, but the primary one that we use is this one here. And if you go to YouTube and look up Badlands Media Official, and you can even type that in, youtube.com/@Badlands Media Official. This is our channel. And so like all these shows get streamed there. We upload clips there sometimes. This is probably the best backup that we'll have. So I'd encourage you guys to all be following and subscribe to that just in case, because you never know. And with the whole YouTube letting accounts back on, there's a whole bunch of stupid stuff like Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones. They got their accounts back and then they were immediately banned, which in our private chats, I don't know if Chris posted this publicly, but he's saying it's like they're just trying to give them street cred, essentially. Like, oh, they got banned again, they're censored again. It's also stupid. But yeah, that is probably the best backup. So I'd encourage you guys to give us a follow there. It doesn't hurt our metrics if you guys go watch a couple seconds, maybe an ad or so over there as well, and hit that thumbs up. It's a pretty easy way to support us when you don't really have to do anything. There's something else I wanted to talk about, but I don't remember now. Okay, well, whatever. Let's just go through a couple ads real quick, and I'm going to keep these pretty brief. The first one is River Bitcoin. I'm not going to play the full ad. I'm just going to say Bitcoin is down a little bit right now. It's a buying opportunity. I think it might even go a little lower. Not financial advice, but just with all this shutdown talk, which is going to be the first story we talk about here. But I would encourage you guys, if you haven't yet, to start throwing some money into Bitcoin. Badlandsmedia.tv/river. And then if you do get Bitcoin, you want to keep it on a cold storage wallet to prevent hackers from getting to it. And that's badlandsmedia.tv/trezor, TREZOR. I also think it's probably, again, not financial advice, but probably a good time, if you haven't, to get yourself some gold and silver, because I don't know, it really feels like this is finally the time we're going to get a shutdown of some sort. And I don't know what that's going to do for the economy or the market or anything generally. And so I just think it's a good idea to be prepared and don't have all your eggs in one basket. If you have everything in cash in the bank or, in the stocks, again, not financial advice, I'd encourage you to at least explore some of your options. Badlandsmedia.tv/gold or badlandsgold.com. Sorry, badlandsgold.com. Check it out. See what they can do for you guys. And then I'm going to play my soft disclosure ad real quick, and then we'll start plugging away at the news items. We're going to talk about the economy and the shutdown and why I think it's a little more serious this time. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different like news headlines, the shooter from yesterday, the ICE stuff. We got the Hague-Seth meeting, like just a bunch of really interesting things going on. So let's get a word in from softdisclosure.com, and then we'll get to it.
Deodorant should do more than cover you up. It should protect you all day long.
Dude, the deodorant stick is legit. I like the mint one.
And, you know, you go work out and you kind of get like, you know, you get funky if you work out. Dude, like at the end of my workout, like I'm sweating, shirt got all those sweat. Like I'm like, dude, I still smell good. Like I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't tried it, try it.
That's the difference with Soft Disclosure. No aluminum, no chemicals, just clean, natural ingredients that fight odor and keep you fresh through every workout, every meeting, every moment.
I've always struggled with the like, you can't use aluminum deodorant because you're going to die if you use it kind of thing, because all of the non-aluminum aluminum deodorant products suck pretty much. Yeah. This is different. This is all day. You're all day good, and you're not putting any of that disgusting chemicals right near your lymph nodes.
Soft Disclosure deodorant, real protection, real freshness, built on truth. Available in mint and lemon grapefruit. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off.
Soft disclosure. Sorry the commercial's so loud. I'm seeing some complaints in the chat there, but nothing I can really do about it. But thank you. Nikki0702 says, loving all the soft disclosure products I've got so far. That's great news. I love them as well. All right, let's do this. We got no update on the Doge website, no update on the presidential website either. I think I saw Trump did say there's going to be some sort of major announcement coming later today. Don't know what it is. I don't know if there's a set time or anything either. I saw that on social media, and you know, you got to believe everything you see on social media. So I'm assuming that's legit, but we'll see what happens. But okay. First major story I want to talk about is the shutdown, and I don't even know how many times. I wish I could go back and count, or I would have been keeping track how many times we've talked about a potential shutdown over the years, because we've expected something to happen at some point, and this time around especially, like, it feels different. And the White House and everybody from Trump's circle is kind of pointing to, yeah, guys, this may be happening because the Democrats are being ridiculous. And I'll play a couple clips on it. Let's start with Hakeem Jeffries and his ridiculousness.
Republicans have clearly demonstrated they want to shut the government down. Throughout this process, an intentional decision was made by Republican leadership in the House and the Senate not to have a single conversation with Democrats. They're not even pretending as if they want to find common ground. Donald Trump agrees to our demand on Saturday to hold a meeting in the Oval Office to try to avert a government shutdown. The meeting is set on Monday for later on in the week. And then Donald Trump wakes up Tuesday morning and goes on an unhinged rant and cancels the meeting. Why? Because he doesn't want to discuss the Republican healthcare crisis, and they've decided to shut the government down. And on top of all of that, Mike Johnson cancels votes that we were scheduled to have.
Before I finish this, did he have a stroke? Does only one side of his body work? Because his hand gestures as he's talking is only coming from his right hand. It's really funny.
Next Tuesday and next Monday, in immediate advancement of a possible government shutdown, decides that
there we
there's
go.
no need for us
Two
to
hands.
be in town. I mean, that's all outrageous, and it points to one thing: Republicans have decided to shut the government down.
I'll let that play in the background. So he starts with two hands. We gotta break this down. When does he get to the one hand thing? Okay, right here. So the 10-second mark. It's one hand, and I'm gonna let that play while I'm talking, so you guys are thoroughly distracted. I know I see people in the chat saying the shutdown is a rug, and it's always been a rug. It's been a rug every single time, no doubt. And you know what? It probably, oh dang it, he stopped. Two hands again, distracting myself. Then he goes back to one hand. There's about a minute of one hand, 20 seconds or so of two hands, for those keeping track. It's always been a rug, and I totally get that. It's very likely, potentially, I don't even know how to say it. It's not going to surprise me if it's a rug this time too. Like, I'm not on this rug. I have been on this rug many times, to the point where I've developed a distaste for how this rug feels. And so I no longer even step on this rug. I expect at some point we're going to get some sort of major government shutdown or major disagreement between the two parties or the White House and Congress, whatever, that leads to either a continuing resolution not being funded or whatever, or the debt ceiling not being raised. Now, I think they raised the debt ceiling. I don't remember for how many years. Was it 2 years, this last one? I honestly don't remember. But that's the two different things. Like, you either don't raise the debt ceiling, and so you don't have the money to pay stuff, or you don't appropriate funds for the fiscal year, or even in the short term. Like, they do a lot of these little short continuing resolutions. You don't appropriate those funds, and then the government shuts down. So again, we've been here before, but why does this feel different? And I think it's because of the rhetoric and what is coming from OMB Director Russ Vought, which we're going to get to in a second. I do just real quick want to point out a couple things. Speaker Mike Johnson responded to what Jeffrey said here. He said, the problem is that Democrats only want to meet to repeat their demands that we include free health care to illegal aliens, $500 million to prop up liberal news outlets, other leftist priorities, and a massive $1.5 trillion spending hike in a simple 7-week funding bill. They are holding government funding hostage. Meanwhile, the Republicans are doing our job and restoring regular order to the appropriations process. If Democrats fail to pass our clean, nonpartisan 24-page CR to keep the government open, the American people will know where the blame lies. Now, another hint that this is potentially a rug and the Democrats might cave is they're only putting out a 7-week funding bill. Like, they're not looking for a full year. They're not looking for even a significant amount of time. It's 7 weeks. So we could be having the same discussion again that we're having right now, except even more serious next time, 7 weeks from now. You have J.D. Vance saying Democrats are about to shut down the government because they demand we fund healthcare for illegal aliens. Stephen Miller responds to that, defunding soldiers to demand free healthcare for illegals. And then we have this story. So, White House Budget Office threatens mass firings if government shuts down. I said back in March, I could probably go find the clip, but you just have to take my word for it. Back in March, we were talking about the debt ceiling in that discussion and how, at the time they'd just gotten rid of the guy who was in charge of cutting checks if it got to a shutdown or a debt ceiling situation, a default situation, and the Treasury took it over, and the Treasury then passed off to Elon Musk and Doge at the time. And I was like, what better way to figure out what departments in the government are completely irrelevant and unnecessary than to shut it down and have everything like stalled for a period of time, and literally nobody's life is affected. There's no better way. And that is what the approach is and the mindset of Russ Vought and the White House this time around. Because typically in shutdown situations, they do what's called furloughs, where people will, they won't work for a period of time until their department is funded. Then they come back in and they're paid again. But this time they're talking about actual firings, like letting people go. And I'll show you, we'll read a little bit of this and I'll show you the actual memos and some of the things that are involved here. The White House Budget Office is telling federal agencies to prepare plans for mass firings in the event of a government shutdown, an apparent threat by the Trump administration amid a standoff with congressional Democrats over federal funding. The directive, outlined in an Office of Management and Budget memo to agencies and obtained by CNN, represents a sharp break from the government's handling of past shutdown scenarios. In the memo, OMB directs agencies to identify programs whose funds will lapse if Congress fails to meet the September 30 funding deadline and that have no alternative source of funding. Those programs should then be targeted for sweeping reductions in force that could permanently eliminate jobs that are deemed not consistent with President Trump's priorities. So let's look at this. It's a short memo. This is what they sent out just the other day. And on this note, before we even get here, I want to show you guys a couple other things here quick. Just don't want to lose. I had a couple things out of place that I don't want to miss. Okay, so first up, every executive agency in the White House has a little page on the White House and White House website. The OMB's page is like very bare. They have like hardly anything for impact statements. They have a couple memoranda things, nothing super urgent. Bulletins, nothing. Circulars. This is the one where if you go in here to OMB Circular A11, they have This is like their budget proposal for the whole year. I think I have. Do I have that pulled up? Yeah, I do. It's 940 pages. Talks about the execution of the budget and everything. Very detailed. One specific section here, section I think it's 124. Section 124 has to do with agency operations in the absence of appropriations. And this is where the details are on what takes place and how these agencies are supposed to operate in the event of a looming shutdown. Every one of these agencies is supposed to have what they call a contingency plan in case of a shutdown. And typically on the website, they'll put those in here, but they don't. They don't have them on the website anywhere. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see some of those because that would provide us the details of which government positions are actually accepted. And what I mean by that is like they're exceptions for being shut down. So like, well, other people are fired, their jobs are still funded in some fashion, or they're, some sort of emergency role having to do with like the safety and whatnot of the people, that they still remain employed and keep working. Which honestly, those bare bones accepted positions for emergency situations only, that is the original intent, I believe, of our government in the first place. That's how things were always supposed to be. But it's become this massive bloated. You guys get it. But okay, let's read the memo real quick. And I think there's some interesting stuff in here. So thank you again from Russ Vought, OMB. Thank you for your agency's efforts to date to prepare for an orderly shutdown in the event of a lapse in appropriations. As required by section 124, which is that memo I just showed you, the 4-page thing. This one here. Oops. 124 of OMB Circular A11, OMB held its first lapse planning call with agencies earlier this week. And this was sent out yesterday, I believe. I believe they had the call Monday. We will continue to provide lapse updates as we approach the end of the fiscal year. Over the past 10 fiscal years, Congress has consistently passed continuing resolutions on or by September 30th on a bipartisan basis. Unfortunately, congressional Democrats are signaling that they intend to break this bipartisan trend and shut down the government in the coming days over a series of insane demands, including $1 trillion in new spending. Last week, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 5371, a clean CR that would fund the government at current levels through November 21st. The administration supports Senate passage of H.R. 5371, but congressional Democrats are currently blocking this clean CR due to their partisan demands. As such, it has never been more important for the administration to be prepared for a shutdown if the Democrats choose to pursue one. Thankfully, H.R. 1 provided ample resources to ensure that many core Trump administration priorities will continue uninterrupted. Programs that did not benefit from an infusion of mandatory appropriations will bear the brunt of a shutdown, and we must continue our planning efforts in the event Democrats decide to shut down the government. If Congress successfully passes a clean CR prior to September 30th, the additional steps outlined in this email will not be necessary. Now, before I continue, this section here is, I think, important because back when they passed H.R. 1, and you guys who routinely watch the show will remember, I was like pretty highly critical of the entire thing. Like I was, there were great things in there that funded Trump's priorities, and I get that, but there was also a lot of bloated bullshit in there as well. Stuff I did not like. And that's just the reality. Like you can argue with it, and so many people were like cheerleading, oh, we finally passed the thing, whatever. But it wasn't, in my opinion, a net win for the economic status of the country. And there was a lot of weird changes and pork put in there. And I was like, okay, well, that is what it is. There's got to be a way for Trump to get rid of this stuff. And one of the things me and Chris discussed shortly thereafter was the pocket rescissions and the Impoundment Control Act. And that is a method that Trump did use that. At one point, I was hoping he would use it many more times, because if you use the rescission, pocket rescissions within, I think it's 30 days or 45 days of the end of the fiscal year, and Congress doesn't address those pocket rescissions, then they don't have to be spent. And that's one way he could trim the fat. But he's only done it like once with a couple $2 billion or something. I don't remember exactly. But now here we are. And what he's saying here is there were things, especially things that were part of Trump's, priorities, the Trump administration priorities, that will continue to be funded. But there were other programs that were in H.R. 1, and I haven't done a full deep dive into what the programs are. I did a quick little breakdown, but it's well over $1 trillion worth of items that are considered annually appropriated, meaning every year they have to include the funding for these programs in some sort of bill, like we're waiting on them to sign here. And those ones, they're saying, will bear the brunt of the shutdown. Like, this is a great way to trim the fat, cut the pork. And the best part about it is the way they're talking about this, instead of just doing these temporary furloughs, they're actually talking about reduction in force. So these people aren't going to be temporarily laid off until they find the money or have the money to bring them back or whatever. They're going to be fired down to bare minimum, bare bones staffing. This is how you do it. This is great. And that's why I'm thinking this is the way. Maybe this time it's actually going to happen. Not on the rug, though. You should never be on the rug. Don't ever stand on the rug. But there's at least reasons to believe that maybe this time it's a little more serious. We'll see. But let's finish this memo here. With respect to those federal programs whose funding would lapse and which are otherwise unfunded, such programs are no longer statutorily required to be carried out. Therefore, consistent with applicable law, including the requirements of 5 CFR Part 351, agencies are directed to use this opportunity to consider reduction in force notices for all employees in programs, projects, or activities that satisfy all three of the following conditions. Discretionary funding lapses on October 1st, 2025. So again, not the good stuff that they were talking about funded by HR 1, the permanent funds. This is discretionary stuff that needs to be re-upped annually. So that's good. That another source of funding such as HR 1 and is not currently available. The PPA is not consistent with the president's priorities. And this is what I think is the best. The PPA is, again, the programs, projects, or activities. How many times has Trump talked about like these executive branch agencies that are doing things, and there have been firings, there's a lot of lawsuits going on and whatnot. A lot of these roles that could potentially be part of this reduction in force, not just furloughed, but reduction in force, are potentially involved in lawsuits right now because Trump has been trying to fire them, and the Supreme Court or the courts have challenged it. All these leftist judges. This is another way to like, okay, well, you don't have the funding. You got reduced in force because it's a discretionary position and they can do that. Too bad, so sad. They're going to file another lawsuit and force us taxpayers to spend money on these positions that aren't statutorily required. And even the statutorily required ones, we can make an argument that those should not be there either. I think this is great. Agencies are encouraged to consider reduction in force. That's a pretty weak rule. I get that Bay Arthur's dick, which, by the way, I still love that name every time I read it. But the thing is all of these agencies, this memo, and maybe I should finish reading it because, no, that's what I'll do. I'll come back to your comment. I'm going to finish reading this. And then, and Phil Scarborough, I see your question too. Think a shutdown has anything to do with the gathering of generals by Pete Hegseth? If not, what's that about? I'll talk about that too. Well, let's finish this first and then I'll address both those things. Reduction in force notices will be in addition to any furlough notices provided due to the lapse in appropriation. RIF notices should be issued to all employees working on the relevant PPA, regardless of whether the employee is expected to or furloughed during the lapse in appropriations. Once fiscal year 2026 appropriations are enacted, agencies should revise their RIFs as needed to retain the minimum number of employees necessary to carry out statutory functions. Any proposed RIF plan must be submitted to the OMB. So every one of the reduction in force plans from all of these agencies needs to be submitted to Russ Vought and his team. So the part that you say is like opportunity to consider reduction in force, it's not very strong language. This is where he can make it strong language. They can mold this into whatever they want to see. As a reminder, updated agency lapse plans were due to OMB on August 1st. OMB has received many, but not all of your submissions. Please send us your updated lapse plans ASAP. As previously communicated, we want to reiterate that what we are expecting to see in these plans. Agency plans should not repurpose balances or assume use of transfer authorities. Any exceptions must be requested of OMB and will be considered on a case-by-case basis. So any of the exceptions they're talking about are people that can continue working, need to be approved by the OMB. That's great. In cases where agencies received appropriations under HR 1, agencies' lapse plans should assume this funding is obligated consistent with OMB-approved spend plans. If you have already submitted your lapse plan to OMB for review, we will be reaching out to you in the coming days to update your plans in line with this guidance as needed. So like if you have given us your plan already, we are going to be getting back in touch with you soon to give you the plans as they should be. So even if there are some like, whatever, anti-Trump or deep state agency heads or submitting plans to keep as many people as possible, doesn't matter. Their plan has to go to OMB. OMB is going to revise them into the vision of what the Trump administration wants and then send it back to them and tell them what it is. We remain hopeful that Democrats in Congress will not trigger a shutdown and the steps outlined above will not be necessary. The president supports enactment of a clean CR to ensure no discretionary spending lapse after September 30th, 2025, and OMB hopes the Democrats will agree. So I hope I addressed your question, Bayauthor's Dick. The reduction in force, the language in here is subtle. It doesn't seem very strong, but the fact that they have to submit it to OMB for approval, and then the OMB is going to look at it and be like, okay, well, here's what you're actually going to do. Here's your actual plan. That alleviates the concerns on my end, at least for now. I want to see what those plans are. I hope they put them on the website at some point. But now what Phil's talking about, think a shutdown has anything to do with the gathering of generals by Pete Hegseth. If not, what is that about? And this is what he's talking about. There's a story out here, which is pretty darn interesting. Hegseth orders rare, urgent meeting of hundreds of generals, admirals. The Pentagon has summoned military officials from around the world for a gathering in Virginia. Even top generals and their staffs don't know the reason for the meeting. Defense Secretary Hegseth ordered a bunch of these generals to come, gather on short notice and without a stated reason at the Marine Corps base in Virginia next week, Quantico, sowing confusion and alarm after the Trump administration's firing of numerous senior leaders this year. And I don't know why. What is this? New York Times? Washington Post. This to me is irrelevant. They're trying to make it seem like he's going to fire all the top military generals, and maybe they are. I don't know. But anyway, the highly unusual directive was sent to virtually all of the military's top commanders worldwide, according to more than a dozen people familiar with the matter. Normally they just have a couple. If they're super serious about the story, they'll have 4 or 5. They have a dozen people, more than a dozen people that are familiar with this particular matter, which makes it the most serious possible story you could have. The directive was issued earlier this week as a government shutdown looms and months after Hegseth's team at the Pentagon announced plans to undertake a sweeping consolidation of top military commands. That is what I think is interesting. In a statement Thursday, Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell affirmed that Hegseth will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week, but he offered no additional details. Parnell, a senior advisor to the Defense Secretary, voiced no concerns about the Washington Post reporting on the meeting scheduled for Tuesday in Quantico, Virginia. There are about 800 generals and admirals spread across the United States and dozens of other countries. Hegseth's order said that it applies to all senior officers of the rank of brigadier general or above, or their Navy equivalent, serving in command positions and their top enlisted advisors. Typically, those officers each oversee hundreds or thousands of rank-and-file troops. Top commanders in conflict zones and senior military leaders stationed throughout Europe, the Middle East, and the Asian Pacific region are among those expected to attend. And so what could this actually be? Now, it could have to do with the shutdown. And what maybe we could discuss a little bit. Oh, where do I have that? I have I have an article here, or a CRS report, Congressional Research Service report about government shutdown and operations at the Department of Defense. It's not updated. It's from 2013, but I do think it's relevant, and I'll show you that. But is it possible it has to do with the shutdown? Absolutely, it is. Could be. Maybe that's it. And if it is, it's kind of a nothing burger. But then you could also make the argument this could have been an email, right? Why did they need to call everybody in to the White House or to Quantico or whatever and meet with them face to face? It almost gives me the same vibe as when Christopher Miller, after, but he was installed as the acting Secretary of Defense on November 11th, after the November 3rd election of 2020. And between the period of November 11th, when he was sworn in, November 10th, God dang it, I can't remember the dates now. It was around that time period, November 10th, 11th, something like that. Between then and when Joe Biden was inaugurated, January 20th, and it was probably even before that. I think the last one he went on was January 6th. But anyway, he went around to all the combatant commanders and sat down and looked him in the eye. And his excuse was to I just got to get a feel for the guy, And one of the things we've talked about over the years is, well, what was he discussing face to face with these people in kind of a lame duck Secretary of Defense role? That's what we're told, right? Why did he need to sit down and meet with them face to face like that? What could you possibly need to tell them that you couldn't do on a Zoom call? Because last I checked, Zoom calls, you also can see people's faces. Obviously, there's something that needed to be discussed that couldn't be done over electronic communications or any other form of communications, phone call, whatever. So whatever this is that is being discussed with Hegseth and the 800 generals that he needs to bring in, the fact that they're doing it like this, the first thing I'm thinking of is that it's like whatever they need to discuss needs to be done in person. They for whatever reason don't trust doing it over the phone or over Zoom or over any other kind of electronic communication. And that's weird. Because like if it's something to do with the shutdown, like, hey guys, the government's about to shut down. These are the things you can keep doing with the funding. This is what the congressionally, appropriated funds are used for the DoD. Everything else has to like stop for a while. Like you don't need to tell them that in person. So my speculation, I do not know this for sure, but my speculation is it's not that. Just seems weird for it to be that. But I don't know what else it could be. I'm not going to go all the way full conspiratorial and be like, military's the only way. This is it now. Like the thing we've been waiting for. I don't think it's that either. But it's got to be something. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out. I'll reach out to a few people that I know that may have insight on it and see if they've heard anything. I can't imagine they're discussing what it is, though. Like the fact that the invite of the meeting was leaked and they don't care is one thing. But the topic of the meeting itself hasn't been leaked yet, which means they're keeping it close to the vest. There are plenty of deep state people out there within the administration and the military and whatnot that if they had told anybody outside of the very inner circle, it would have leaked by now. And we would have 12 anonymous sources familiar with the matter talking about it. But that hasn't happened yet. So curious to see. I don't know. Your speculation is as good as mine. It could be something with Venezuela. Oh, man. D. Brew Rare says, John, notice you're turning a little gray up top already. Yeah. I got grays, especially my beard down here. I feel like the topic comes up often, especially when my hair gets long, because I haven't had a haircut since the last guard. When was that? That was like August. It's getting a little dicey. Need to get that scheduled, but I'm just so busy right now. Bay Up the Sticks is not even a skiff. I don't know where in Quantico. I mean, do they have a skiff large enough to have 800 or however many people, hundreds of people in? I don't know. Buck Wayne says, Hegseth may be culling out the sleepers in service who oppose Meg's agenda. That would be cool. Could be, but also you don't need to bring everybody in to do that. Like that's the weird part of this. There are lots of possible explanations for what this could be. But how many of them require all of these top generals and whatever to come to one place at the same time? And how many of those things like can't be done over the phone, over email, or in any other form? Has to be done face to face, and they all need to be at the same place at the same time. And my hope here is that this story itself is not a rug, because it's interesting. I'm not saying like I'm expecting something really, really awesome to come from this and it not be that thing. That's not what I mean by rug. Like, I don't want it to be like a super gay. We just wanted to. I can't even think of something. Like, now that we're the Department of War, we wanted new sweet badges to pass out to everybody. And like, I hope they don't make it some sort of like ceremonial, stupid thing like that. Like, if you're going to do this, it better be for good reason. And I hope we find out what that good reason is. And it's not anything stupid. Maybe they're getting battle plans of some kind. That could be. Like, we had some interesting talk and discussion from Trump the last couple of days from the UN. John Alpha believes it's Venezuela. Maybe, but then again, Venezuela is in a specific combatant command. You don't need every single of the top militaries coming in. You don't need all the top commanders. Europe, do you need Europe to come in to deal with Venezuela? Do you need the Middle East to come in and deal with Venezuela? Asia Pacific? I'm skeptical. I wonder when the last time there was a meeting of like all the top generals. Let me see if I can find that. Hundreds. When was the last time hundreds of the military's generals gathered in one spot on short notice? Hold for processing while I Google that. Or Perplexity that. When was the last time memos were ordered Let's see what it says. The last time hundreds of military generals and admirals were ordered to gather on short notice is happening right now. Well, I want before that. Despite many large planned conferences and war games over the decades, there is no public record in modern U.S. history of the Secretary of Defense summoning this many generals and admirals, especially on short notice, at once and in person. There you go. I mean, and yeah, I could be wrong, as always, but it's just something weird. I don't know what it is, but something weird is going on. Diligent says cleaning house, maybe. Lee Walden, they'll be introduced to a new weapon system that cannot be, how should I say, on the phone? Maybe. Phil Scarborough, what about FBI seizes weapons of mass destruction documents from John Bolton's office? Did they say it was weapons of mass destruction? John Bolton, weapons of mass destruction. I thought it was just classified documents. Oh, yeah. Included information about weapons of mass destruction. There you go. See, look at this, Phil. You got to start DMing me these things because I'm always looking for stuff to talk about. I just thought they were classified documents. Like, oh, whatever. Newly released court records show the FBI seized multiple documents labeled secret, confidential, and classified. Court records say some of the classified documents included information about weapons of mass destruction. Oh, my gosh. What in the world? Yeah, we'll see what happens here, guys. I'm sure this will be something. I don't know if they set a date for this yet. I am curious to see. Oh, here, Ghost Space Patrick Henry says, could have something to do with Trump's meeting yesterday with the Arabs. It could. Speculation abound. And this is the thing, like, we can speculate all day up and down, but we're not going to know until we know. And we may not know. And they might tell us what it was, and that might not be the truth. But it'll be interesting to follow. Definitely curious to see. And this is the part of the CRS, that report that I was talking about the shutdown having to do with government. And there's one quote in here that I really liked, but it wouldn't let me highlight it. Okay, yeah, I think this is it. And again, this is specifically related to the DOD. Legally, according to DOJ and OMB guidance, activities that may continue during a lapse in appropriations include activities necessary to bring about the orderly termination of the agency's functions. So that's easy enough. Administration of benefit payments provided through funds that remain available in the absence of new appropriations, including, in this case, or the case of the DoD, military retirement benefits. So if you were in the military, you'll still get your benefits. The debt ceiling, on the other hand, if that was what we were dealing with, then you wouldn't. But this case, you will. Activities and purchases financed with prior year funds and ongoing activities for which funding has already been obligated. Makes sense. And then activities undertaken on the basis of constitutional authorities of the president. Love that, because that's a very broad brush. Keep in mind, though, this is from 2013. I couldn't find anything of an update, but I have to imagine in the last 12 years, they've updated some of this shit. And then number 5, and this is probably most important, activities related to emergencies involving the safety of human life or the protection of property, which is, again, the DOD's constitutional role. Makes sense. And that should be like basically the baseline and almost the top line of what our government should be used for in the first place. Like, that's it. We'll pay taxes, to the federal government for a military. You guys protect us and our property. We'll do everything else at the state level. We'll fund our roads at the state level. We'll do all that shit on our own. We don't need you for anything else. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But we'll see. We'll see what happens and comes to this, guys. It is what it is. Bunny, it ends Monday. Need to have Peter, from Phil Scarborough again, need to have Peter Tickton on to fill you in on the link between Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles and the use of voting machines. They created them and sold them everywhere to rig elections to the left. Totally agree. I do like Peter Tickton. I'm gonna have to have him on again at some point. I'm dealing with some stuff right now that is like very urgent, and that the deadline on it is this coming Monday. And once that's done, I'll finally be able to get some sleep again and catch up on some of these other things I want to do and do more interviews and whatnot. So I'll keep that in mind and keep it on the back burner. But right now, all my extra time outside of my kids has been focused on this other project. And I'll discuss what that was in the future. I don't know when, but Ghost Space Patrick Henry says Samson option would necessitate this meeting, I would think. That is an interesting point and a good one. I think you're right. but I'm not going to go. Like, there are other things that could also necessitate this meeting. That is one of those possibilities. I don't know what the other options are. So, but I do believe they probably exist. Like, that is not the only reason that would necessitate this meeting. So I'm not willing to like jump on that right away, but that is an interesting one for sure. Let's see. Okay, we're going to move on to other topics now. I think might come back to a couple of things if I missed it, but Forbes reported that Jimmy Kimmel's Live draws over 6 million broadcast viewers following his suspension. I don't know if that was live. I didn't actually go click on the website, but it's clearly a substantial increase to his regular viewership. And this was the problem all along. This is what I was saying. Like, this was the point of it. The whole thing was an op for this exact reason. Con Inc. Right breathed a breath of life into Jimmy Kimmel, the propaganda arm of the Democrats. You idiots. And I spent 40 minutes talking about the shutdown stuff. Whoopsie. Let's see what else here. Jobless claims tumbled to 218,000, well below estimate, despite fears of labor market weakness. So good job numbers, or jobless numbers, I should say. Let's see here. I have to cruise through a few of these. Starmer is endorsing digital ID cards to target illegal immigration. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is preparing to back plans for a national digital ID card system requiring all adults to present identification when starting work or renting property, the Telegraph reports. The proposed Brit card would replace physical documents, which officials warn are open to forgery because digital ID stuff isn't, with automatic checks against a central database confirming the holder's right to live and work in the UK. I wonder if it's going to come with a social credit score here long after that. But look at the game plan here. It's like we're going to flood ourselves with illegal immigrants and create this huge, massive problem. And then we're going to say, like, oh, yeah, there is this huge problem with illegal immigrants. We need to figure out a way to delineate between the legal immigrants, or the legal citizens of this country, and the illegal immigrants. Let's get everybody on the social ID or the digital ID cards. So now they can track and monitor everything about you, which is what they've wanted all along. They create the problem to sell you the solution that they wanted at the end. So good job, UK. Great job. DOJ, this is an interesting one. DOJ has ordered prosecutors to draft cases against Soros's Open Society. Senior Justice Department official has ordered multiple U.S. attorneys' offices to prepare investigative plans targeting the Open Society foundations, the network funded by billionaire donor George Soros, according to the New York Times. The directive issued Monday by Akash Singh from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche's office was sent to prosecutors in New York, California, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Detroit, and Maryland. A lot of blue states there, almost exclusively, and other jurisdictions. It outlined possible charges, including racketeering, wire fraud, arson, and material support for terrorism, citing a recent report that accused the group of funneling over $80 million to organizations linked to extremist violence. And that report that they're talking about from the CRS, and this Ryan Morrow, I went through it. It was specifically talking about, I mean, not exclusively, explicitly, but it was a lot of Antifa in there, which that and how it ties into Trump's executive order, which we talked about again last night, not having any teeth. I think there's going to be more coming, and Trump said he's going to be doing another thing. It's interesting, but why I think this story is most interesting is how has this not already been done? And we can make the argument that it was already done, and this is just the disclosure for it. That's totally possible. Totally possible. And I could be sold on that theory. But if that's not the case, the other side of that is we've been sold a bill of goods on what George Soros is, and we've believed a lot of things about him, and I still believe those to be true. But then why over the past, like, we've been talking about Soros since 2019. Like, before I even started getting into like social media stuff and posting stuff online, when I was just following along, like, everybody knew about Soros and his left-wing activities. We're just now investigating him? What? So I hope this is just the disclosure of it and the story they're telling us as to how they're disclosing it. Because if that's not true, what the hell's been going on? So I don't necessarily believe this story or the timing of it. There's just something weird here, psyop. But I would love to see some accountability for the funding from the Soros Foundation. Have I said anything dumb in the chat yet? Whiskey Girl confirms my never wanting to travel abroad. Just one more reason not to. Real ID says tattoo teacher. Good to see that. Yeah. I mean, kind of. Real ID though is like, okay, you have 3 government documents that the government already knows all these things. Use those things to get another government document. It's not like a digital thing, which, by the way, if we're being honest with ourselves, the government everywhere always, and maybe not the government, but like Palantir and all these other, tech companies, the tech bros, they already have all this stuff on you anyway. Everything. But the government like being in your face, like, yeah, we're going to create a digital ID. That's what's ridiculous. The Trump administration partners with Musk's XAI to deploy AI across federal agencies. I already thought this happened. They just did Meta's. They've got like 12 different AIs across the federal agencies. How many do we need? You'd think they just do one, but no, they're like letting every single one in. And maybe there's some like sort of partnership thing developing with all these things. And we are going to take all the AIs and breed them to create the master AI that will destroy us all. That's probably what's going on. Head of Virginia's prosecutor's office plans to bring Comey case before a grand jury. Talked about this a little bit on the Power. We may have talked about this on yesterday's show. I don't remember. But regardless, remember last week, Trump was like really critical of Pam Bondi and said some really mean things. And then he immediately followed that up with how much he loves Pam Bondi and forget everything I just said. But then they fired the Eastern District Attorney, or the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. They got one of his staff members in there, this attorney, Lindsay Halligan. And immediately afterwards, they are telling us they might be going after Comey for lying to Congress. Not for treason, not for any of the other crimes that he committed, not for leaking classified documents, but we are in a mad rush to go after him for lying to Congress because the statute of limitations expires next Tuesday. In terms of accountability, like this is better than nothing, but it's not even near the level of accountability we should be demanding, considering what we think this guy's done. So we'll see what happens. The Trump administration is planning $1.8 billion shift to foreign aid to America First priorities. It's a great move. Seems like a low number, though, considering relatively. Trump administration plans to redirect nearly $2 billion in U.S. foreign aid toward initiatives advancing the president's America First agenda, according to a State Department document sent to Congress on September 12th. They're going to reallocate the $1.8 billion that was going to Marxist anti-American regimes in Latin America and instead investing in Greenland and Ukraine. I don't like the Ukraine thing. Oh, or maybe I'm not sure how this is read. I don't know if they're talking about taking funds from Latin America, Greenland, and Ukraine. Yeah, but they are cutting funds from West Bank. Well, cutting $175 million for the West Bank and Gaza and $150 million for Iraq. Yeah, well, cutting funding generally is great. I wish they wouldn't reallocate it. I wish they'd just put it in the Doge number. Anyway, I did have that story lined up, Phil Scarborough. My bad. I just didn't read all the way through it and notice that it was weapons of mass destruction. Did this story, did that story, did that story. We can talk about this real quick. This is from Kash Patel. He put out a post about the Dallas ICE shooter, the Texas ICE shooter. FBI Dallas and FBI HQ have been working 24/7 to seize devices, exploit data, and process writings obtained on location and in the subject's person residence bedroom. This FBI is committed to providing timely updates as promised. They're much more timely with this one than they are about some other things. Anyway, the perp downloaded the document titled Dallas County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, containing a list of DHS facilities. He conducted multiple searches of ballistics and the Charlie Kirk shot video between 9/23 and 9/24. And if that alone is a problem, a lot of people are going to be investigated because, I searched that, trying to figure out what's going on. There is a new video circulating, a new angle that shows something interesting. I don't know if I'm getting on board with it yet, but who knows? But it shows like his speaker thing kind of shooting up into him. It's interesting. Between 8/19 and 8/24, he searched apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents. That is notable because the Democrats were like literally advertising that thing. They're complicit. One of the handwritten notes recovered read, "Hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think Is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof? Further accumulated evidence to this point indicates a high degree of pre-attack planning. The FBI will provide further updates when able. But again, not about the Kirk one, just about this one. A couple True Social posts from Trump. He's talking about election fraud again, which is awesome. I know last night on the Power Hour, we discussed this one, talking about 2024 and how Kamala Harris said it was like the closest election in the 21st century. And he's talking about California being rigged. Well, today he's talking about the case in, I think it's New Jersey, the governor's race, and how, go out there and vote for Jack Citarelli. And then he reposted this one, which says, Jack obliterated her Sunday night in their debate. I was astounded at how ill-prepared she was. She refused to answer almost every question given and talked in circles. Reminded me of Kamala Harris. If he loses to her, it will be because of cheating. Isn't that awesome? And we know that to be true. And also last night, I'd encourage you guys, again, go to YouTube, youtube.com/@ Badlands Media Official, and check out last night's DPH. Because we talked about the message Trump put out on True Social regarding the what was it, the three sabotages. So funny. And then is there anything else that I got? I don't think so. Well, that's good news. So guys, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up if you don't mind. I truly appreciate it when you guys do that, and share it around with your friends and family if you think they'd be interested in the show. And yeah, if you have topics that you want me to discuss, I'm open. Like, send me a DM on Twitter or comment on something in the show. I don't check the Rumble comments because a lot of that gets filled with trolls and haters. But on Twitter, like, I will take to heart earnest comments and maybe talk about them on the show if you guys have any. And let's see if there's anything in the chat that is sticking out. Oh, Dan Scavino got engaged. Yep, did see that. That's pretty cool. She said yes. Yeah, Whiskey Girl, is Mike exploding like the page bombs? It's a very interesting theory. It definitely is. But all right. Kelly and Oak says, every power has been great recently. Thank you. We try. All right. I think with that, I'm just going to end it. I got some other stuff to do before I go pick up my kids. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Again, hit that thumbs up. And I will see you again here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Daily Herald. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Extra, extra, read all about it. 2, 3. Let's get started.
That's real good.
Why they stopping me? Stopping me.